everyone will be seated, we'll go on the record outside the present jury. There are some matters to take up prior to the jury coming in. The rest of you may.
I'll let Mr. Ball. Thank you, Your Honor. We understand that the state is to call two additional witnesses from one from each family for each victim. So one from Ms. Smith's family and one witness from Ms. Landavasos's family. We object to the testimony under 403 and under the Salazar factors, and also under the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
And also what?
Under the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Ms. Shelton.
Your Honor, the two witnesses will be talking about victim impact, which I believe is allowed under the law, and Shameka Smith is the mother of Michaela Smith. I anticipate she's going to talk about Michaela and the impact that it's had on this offense, or these offenses have had on Michaela Smith before and during and after, and the afternoon that she received a telephone call from Michaela and their exchanges, which was part of the actual offense. And then the effect that it's had on Michaela with her family in school. And then secondly, Vern LandavasosTestifies will testify about the loss of Lauren and the impact it's had on his family, and about Lauren and her life, which I believe is allowed by law.
Anything else, Mr. Ball?
Your Honor, should the court overrule our objection, we will request a non-objection.
All right, the court will overrule the objection. You may have a running objection read in the testimony of the family witnesses. Does the defense have anything else before we?
Judge, there was a matter of the extractions.
Let me address that. The exhibits that were admitted to the FBI, the plaintiff officer that works on the task force, we, under the court's direction, paper exhibits were redacted. The disc itself, which is voluminous, was not redacted, but was admitted as a redacted document. So I talked to counsel prior to the hearing. I know that redaction is not something that can be done today. A suggestion has been made that disc become a court exhibit, so it's in the record. I can't imagine that the jury would want to look at that disc, but that would be one way to do it without having to actually do a physical redaction. So what's your response to that, Mr. Poole, or how will we do that?
Judge, my position on that would be leave things as the way they are through the conclusion of this trial. If the jury does not ask to see that exhibit, then we will agree, the defense agrees, to transfer it to a court exhibit. If the jury does want to see a portion of that exhibit, then whatever portion they examine will be made a part of the record, and the remainder will be transferred to the court as its exhibit under a different number.
All right, I'll follow your suggestion and do it that way, but the jury is not to receive the disc in its current form, as long as we're all on the same page and understand that.
If the jury wants to see that, it's going to take several hours, but there's no way.
Well, and then it would take several hours for them to review the exhibit. But if we get to that point,
to set it up where they can see it.
right, if we get to that point, then we'll cross that bridge there. Anything else before the jury?
No, sir.
My plan would be, of course, to hear the evidence and then break and prepare the charge. I'm assuming that you worked on the draft of the charge anyway, so we'll get to that point and then see where we are time-wise.
Yes, sir.
All right, state ready for the jury?
State's ready.
Is the defense ready?
Correct.
Proceed, please. Is the state ready to proceed on punishment?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready?
Ready, Your Honor.
State may make an opening statement.
Your Honor, at this time, the state of Texas would waive its opening statement.
Okay, Mr. Boss?
Your Honor, similarly, the defense will be open statement.
All right, the state may proceed.
Am I heard, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would offer what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 256.
Your Honor, we reviewed and stipulated to said document and no objection.
State's Exhibit 256 is admitted.
May I publish a portion of it to the jury?
Yes, the court has approved the stipulation.
Stipulation of evidence. Kody Lott, the defendant, with the consent and advice of his attorney, enters into this stipulation of evidence with the state of Texas as represented by Maureen Shelton, Criminal District Attorney, Wichita County, Texas. It is hereby agreed and stipulated to by all the parties that Mr. Lott stipulates and agrees that he is one and the same individual subject to an order of deferred adjudication community supervision for the offense of felony theft entered in the District Court of Baylor County, Texas, 50th Judicial District, in a case on the docket of said court entitled The State of Texas versus Kody Lott, number 5556. Signed and agreed to on this 20th day of September 2018. And on that, you're going to find the order of deferred adjudication where Mr. Lott was placed on 3 years deferred adjudication for the felony offenses theft. At this time, Your Honor, the state of Texas would re-offer all the evidence that was admitted during the guilt innocence phase.
Evidence admitted during guilt innocence is admitted subject to the prior ruling of the court during that phase of the proceedings.
And the state of Texas would call Shameka Smith.
And will you raise your right hand and be sworn, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Just have a seat. Once you're seated, if you'll adjust the microphone so you can speak directly into the microphone. You may proceed.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Shameka Smith.
And Mrs. Smith, how are you employed?
I'm a first grade teacher at Petrolia Elementary.
And how long have you been a first grade teacher?
I'm going into my 4th year.
And are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
And who are you married to?
Rodney Smith.
And what does Rodney do?
Rodney is the pastor of the church that we attend, Wells Street Church of Christ. And he works for security finance as an HR director. Sorry.
No, you're doing great. And do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
And could you state their names and their ages?
We have Travion, he's 27. We have Takaylin, he's 20. We have Michaela, she's 15, sorry. And then we have Soraya, and she just turned 6.
And you were in the courtroom when Michaela testified.
Yes.
And I'd like to start off with, back in September 2016, what grade was Michaela in?
She was in the 8th grade.
And how did she get home?
She walked. We allowed her to walk.
And did you know Law&Crime LandavasosTestifies?
Yes.
And how did you know Lauren?
We came to know Lauren in elementary, Fowler Elementary. The girls ended up being on the cheer squad together.
So they were good friends?
Yes.
And I'm going to direct your attention to September 2nd of 2016. Okay. What were you doing that day?
Normal day of teaching.
And had you talked to Michaela that morning?
Not that morning before she left, yes.
Okay. And what y'all talk about? Was it just a typical day?
It's just a typical day. In the Smith household, everyone wakes up on the good side of the bed every morning, and just whatever conversation, or we typically make jokes about her dad. Just a typical day. And when we all depart our separate ways, we tell each other bye and that we love each other.
And can you describe Michaela's personality up to that point?
Michaela's so funny. She has a joke for everything. She loves puns. She's just a happy child.
And on September 2nd of 2016, when was the first time you heard from Michaela that afternoon?
I was getting ready to dismiss my students for the day. And we dismissed from our gym, but we have to walk through the cafeteria to get to the gym. Walking through the cafeteria, I met up with another teacher that teaches kindergarten, and her daughter walks home with Michaela, and she picks her up from our house. And when we met, she said that Michaela had forgotten her daughter. So I just had my phone on me already, and I said, I'll give her a call and make sure that she goes back and get her. So I proceeded to call Michaela and tell her, to go back and make sure she has her friend with her. And I hear her phone tussling. So I'm thinking that maybe she had butt down me. And so I'm yelling her name to pick up, and so when she finally answered, she was just yelling my name. But
how would you describe her when she's yelling your name?
She was crying, and she kept, calling my name. From that first moment, I thought maybe she was getting into an altercation with another student, and I know that's not her. And so I kept telling her to calm down. I can't understand what you're saying. And I asked her to do that several times, and I was like, what's going on? And that's when she got out. Then someone shot Lauren. And I asked her what? And she said, someone shot me. And I was like, what? It just wouldn't register. And I kept asking her, where? She said, Mommy, I was shot in the chest. And she said, Lauren is not moving. And I then proceeded to run down the hall and hoping I would run into my principal. I couldn't breathe because it hit me that she was telling me the truth. I did run into my principal and the counselor at the school at that time. And I just told her, I'm on the phone with Michaela. She said she's been shot. She asked me, do you know where she is? And I said yes, because we tell her to walk the same way home every day, so we know if something happens, we know where she is. They instantly grabbed me, put me in the car, and we were leaving the school. I don't recall the drive from out of the parking lot of the school all the way down until we got to the intersection of Southwest and Barnett, because she crossed the median to go through the light. And I told her to go that way because I didn't know where she was in the alley. We seen she wasn't at the beginning of the alley, and I told her to go through the apartments so we can go out. We went out through the apartments and went out through the other end, came out the other end, and we did see a bunch of cars. And we went around, we got out, and we went around, and we seen that it was taped off. And
The crime scene tape?
yes, there was several sections, and we got to the first one, and I told the officer who I was and my daughter, but the whole ride there, I was on the phone and I kept like, she was just screaming. She was just screaming. And as a mother, you know the tones of hurt that your children have. And that tone was a scream I've never heard from her or none of my other children. And I remember asking God to in there, one of the ladies, whom I found out who it was later, got the phone from her. And I was like, is she okay? She was like, she's going to be fine. She's okay. I'm here with her. And when we had to hang up. And so when we got there, that first section of tape, the officer wouldn't let us through. And so my principal, being who she is, she said, that's your baby. And she pulled through the tape. But then we came across another section of tape, and that's when I was able to get a better look. I couldn't see down the alley. I could just see the start of the alley, and when I looked that way, I seen the bottom of Converse tennis shoes. And at first I thought it was Michaela. And I just lost it. And I didn't know what to do. I was told later on that I had fell to the ground and the officers had to help me up. And I stopped. I couldn't look that way anymore because at that time I didn't know. And I wasn't on the phone with the nurse, so I didn't know the situation of Michaela. And the officer then walked me to the ambulance, and they put me in the front. But before I got there, I was able to catch a glimpse down the alley, and all I could yell was, Michaela's mommy's here. I seen her arm come up, and I just assumed it was hers because I didn't know if anybody else's child were hurt, because I knew another one of her friends was also African American. So I was just praying that that was my child's arm. Sitting in front of the ambulance, and I couldn't see behind me or whatever if they had put her in or not. So I got my phone and I called my husband. And I happened to tell him that they me at the hospital. Michaela's been shot. And it didn't register with him at first, and he asked me again. And I said, Michaela's been shot in her chest, and I don't know how bad it was. I guess they finally got her in, and they started driving toward the hospital, and I'm still not knowing, how bad it was. And we get to the hospital, and they take her out first, and then they take me out and walk me in, and from that point, it was like a scene out of a movie. When you see the people sitting there wanting to know what's going on and no one's talking to you. And it was just Vern and I sitting there, not knowing what was going on with our girl. Rocky and Bianca at that time had been locked out of the hospital because they locked the hospital down and they wouldn't let anybody. The clergy of the hospital came to console us. Then he left and he came back. When he came back, he told Vern, I'm going to take you to your wife and I'm going to take you to a family room. Based off of things that you see maybe on TV, that when they put you in a family room, it's not going to be good enough. And I'm wondering, am I going to be next? He was gone for a few minutes, and he came back. And he told me he wanted to take me to my husband, and they were going to put us in a room, and I told him I didn't want to go. I I needed to know what was going on with Michaela, and he pleaded with me to go with him. And I went because I didn't want to be with my husband at that time. And while we were walking there, we passed by the first family room. And I hear Bianca scream. And the scream still sits with me. Because the way she screamed, I knew Laura was gone. And that's the way she screamed out. And I just didn't want to go in the room because I didn't want the second news. And I had seen her fall to her knees. They hadn't got Rodney in at that moment. And when they did, we were in like a small office off to the side. And when it came in, I told him Laura was gone. I could tell by the way Bianca screamed that Laura was gone. And they won't tell us about Michaela. I don't know anything about Michaela. They got us into the family room, and just probably what was probably just a few minutes seemed like forever. They finally came and told us that, Michaela was gonna be okay. Sitting there, having to hear Bianca from the other room. She's bleeding. No. For her child. And I couldn't sit there. So I walked out and I went to the room so I can hold her and console her. And I was sorry. And I felt so bad because there was nothing I could do. The whole day was just like a scene out of a movie. And I was like, how is this happening? How is it happening? Two good family, good people, and something is horrible. We were actually living it. And it's like, I couldn't believe it. It still gives me anxiety when Michaela calls me. And her phone pops up, when her picture pops up on my phone, especially for the first year, because I would quickly answer. My principal said it where if your kids call, you answer. But I have to. But any of my kids call. But when Michaela was calling me, it brought me back to that day. And I was like, every time I get ready to answer a phone call from her, I'm thinking, hopefully she's calling because either she forgot something and need her dad to bring it, or she's asking if she can go over to a friend's house. And that's still now when she calls or she texts me.
And Shameka, when you first saw Michaela at the hospital, can you describe to the jury how that was?
Michaela's gone to the hospital before for bronchitis. And as a parent, you know that when they fall sick like that they're going to be okay. And antibiotics will clear it up. But on that day, I felt so helpless. Because my baby was in pain. And there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't kiss her away. I couldn't get her medicine to take it away. she got that day. That's the hardest thing I've ever had to endure with my kids. But Michaela, being who she is, she said, Mommy, it's gonna be okay.
She thinks about others first, doesn't she?
All the time. She doesn't like to see her parents upset. She's a daddy's girl. And so she does everything she can to make sure she pleases her dad. Because he hung the moon for her. And
Were you there when she was told that Lauren was gone?
yes. She kept asking about her. And she even asked, could they put us in the same room? And she's like, how is she doing? Robbie and I made an excuse to go out of her room. We were like, how are we going to tell her? When do we tell her? Do we keep up a lie? I was like, she needs to know. So we talked with her charge nurse and said that we need to go in and tell her because we didn't want her flipping the TV channels and she found out on the news. Two of the nurses came in with us just in case they need to be there to calm her down. So we went in and I sat on the bed with her. I had to tell her that her friend didn't make it. She said, why, Mom? Why did it have to be Lauren? And she told me in her bed, it should have been me. Because Lauren is such a good person and didn't deserve it. And trying to console your child and tell her that you're here for a reason, you're still here for that did nothing for her. She still fights with the fact that she wasn't good enough to be saved that day. And Lauren should still be with us. And we battle that with her.
So people probably say to you unknowingly that you're the lucky one, that Michaela survived. And there's other issues you're dealing with because Michaela lived and survived the shooting, weren't she?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury some of how it's changed Michaela or in her interaction with family or friends?
Michaela, she stays glued to her cell phone. And normally that would be a typical teenager, but she has to stay on her phone because she feels she has to talk to her friends every day. And if she can't speak to her friends every day, she feels like if she doesn't, that she will lose one of them. And she never got a chance to tell them that she loved them. So, we can't take her phone away from her. If she's getting bad grades or whatever else, because she broke down on us one time when we tried that. And I had to give it back to her. Because I don't want her to think that, I don't want her to have connections to her friends. And this is every day. Every day. She talks to several of her friends through text messages or Snapchats. And she tells them that she loves them. Every day. And when she told me that she has to do that because she never got a chance to say that to Lauren goodbye when they were about to take their separate ways that day.
What do you call your life now with your family?
I don't know what to call it. Everyone has told us that you'll find it new normal. But I asked myself, normal? When all you know was your normal. And yes, some days, they're good days. We laugh and we smile. But when something comes up, it just reverts back to that day. My husband and I no longer watch the news because to hear that a child has been taken out by gun violence or injured due to gun violence, we can no longer say, oh, let's pray for that family. Now we're saying, we know what they do. Or we know what that child is dealing with or having to live with. It's not the same anymore. And I'm that parent that takes great pride in protecting my children. And on that day, at 3:27, 8 p.m., that was taken away from me. Because I felt like I didn't protect her. I felt like I deal with it every day. What if I had called her earlier like I normally do to remind her, don't forget your friend. But that day I put it down. It hit different. Friday dismissals time are not the same for me anymore. For the first few weeks, I had to have my teacher's aide take my kids to dismissal. Because I was scared. If I walked into dismissal, then I'd get another phone call. And the stress of living with that. Not being able to get that out your head. We don't let Michaela walk anymore. And although she's in high school, she catches the bus in our neighborhood to go to her high school. We don't let her walk to the bus. We don't let her walk home from the bus. If her dad and I can't be there to get her, we find someone to pick her up. And there was one time her dad was late getting her, and she walked home. And he called me and said, hey, talk to me. I instantly hung up with him and called her. She didn't answer, and I just kept calling her. And when she answered, by the time I was upset, I was like, where are you? And she said, Dad wasn't there, so I walked home. And I made her stay on the phone with me until she got to the house. It's just things like that.
All right, this time let's stay with custody, please.
Question, Joe?
Thank you, ma'am. You may have
Stay with Kody Lott, Vern LandavasosTestifies.
Please raise your right hand and be sworn, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat, please. You may proceed.
Please state your name.
Vern LandavasosTestifies.
And Vern, are you married?
I am.
And who are you married to?
Bianca LandavasosTestifies.
And do you two have children, any children?
We have our son Jordan and our daughter Lauren. Jordan is 29, Lauren Jordan was 13. And I have a son, Tim, from my first marriage. He's 36. Jordan is 29.
And they, your sons are in the courtroom and have been part of this trial, correct?
Yes, my son, Tim, lives in Colorado. He came out for that, and Jordan has been living with us since March of this year. He got a divorce, and he came home for a while.
And then how long have you and Bianca been married?
I had trouble with this anyway, but we got married in 1988, so, right? She doesn't know, so it doesn't matter. 30
So you're not in
years.
trouble, right?
We've been married for 30 years.
And there's quite a difference between Jordan and Lauren.
Yes, 13 years.
And where were you working before Lauren was born?
I had actually was just getting ready to retire from the Air Force. I had dropped my paperwork in 2001, and then shortly after that, we found out that Bianca was pregnant.
And you never had a little girl?
Never had a little girl. I always had a feeling I was going to have a little girl. In fact, when my son Tim was born, all the way up, I was in the room for all three of my children's delivery, and I remember going to the hospital with Tim's mom, and I remember getting ready to go into the delivery room with just a very strong feeling that I was going to have a little girl. Ever since I found out that Tim's mom was pregnant, I had an overwhelming feeling that I was going to have a girl. And something about that day, as soon as I grabbed that gown to put it on, I had a voice just say, no, it's not going to be a girl, it's going to be a boy. And same thing with Jordan. When we found out when Bianca and I were going to have a baby, that just the overwhelming feeling that it was going to be a girl. And how surprised I was when it was not a girl.
So how were you feeling when you found out that Bianca was pregnant with Lauren, which you didn't know she was a girl at the time?
Right, at first we didn't know, but again, having been 13 years of trying and not having had another baby, it just, after the shock wore off, I just thought, yeah, this has to be the girl. And then when we went for the ultrasound, a lot of times there's questions, you can't tell the sex of the baby. The picture we got, there was no doubt that was a girl.
And how did you feel when you found out the news?
It felt like that was what was supposed to be. That was the feeling I had been having since 1983 when Tim was born, that I would be the father of a daughter.
And so, were you there when Lauren was born?
I was.
Okay, and what did you think?
Instantly, when I saw her, we were told in the delivery room not to take pictures because it blinds the doctors and stuff. So, of course, as soon as I saw they had come out, I took pictures. Just how amazingly beautiful she was. Her eyes were open, and just something about it. I mean, as soon as she came out, normally they put the baby on the mother's belly or something, and I might even have scooped her away from the doctor at first before that. Just to go lay her on the table and look in her eyes, and just realize that finally what that feeling I had, that feeling I had been looking forward to, that it had actually come true. Just amazed at that.
And that amazing young girl, can you tell us a little bit about her childhood?
There's always something about Lauren, and I know all parents have that feeling about their children. There's something special about that child, but even in comparison to my sons, that there was just something about Lauren. It's hard to explain, just that she seemed so much wiser than her years. She always, I remember even being 2 or 3 years old and looking over and seeing her look at me, and the way she was looking at me, that there was something going on behind there, and it just seemed she was just so much more advanced than you would think a child would be, as far as her compassion for people, her kindness, just how tender she was with other people. And I remember going to see Tim after his daughter Danny was born, and his wife at the time was not feeling well. Tim and I went for a walk to have a talk, and when I came back, Tim's mom was telling me that Marina did not feel well and that she had cramps and she was kind of uncomfortable, and she was just struck with how tender Lauren was and how concerned Lauren was with her. How she was patting her on the back, and Lauren was just about to turn 3 at that point. In fact, my ex-wife threw a surprise birthday party for her while we were there, but just for a 3-year-old to be that empathetic, to have that much concern for somebody else, she was kind of struck by that. And I think probably what made me the proudest, it was just how she interacted with people, especially other children, how kind she was to them. I never saw her once be mean to somebody, say a mean thing. Quite the opposite. She went out of her way. If she knew that somebody was troubled, she went out of her way to reach out to that person. And when I grew up in a military family. My dad was in the military, and that entails moving around a lot.
Mine also.
Yes, and one of the, I mean, there's good things about that. You get to see a lot of different places. You get to do a lot of different things, meet different people. But as a child in school, that's very uncomfortable to be the new kid in school. And what that feels like to go into a new school and not know anybody, and something about lunchtime in a cafeteria when you don't have friends, being the new person. And then to hear the stories, especially afterwards, from kids who knew Lauren in junior high, which can be a pretty tough experience. Kids that age are not always the nicest to each other, but to hear the children, the kids that would be those lonely kids in the cafeteria, and to hear the story how scared they were, how just that apprehension and looking up to see not just somebody coming over, but the really the most amazingly beautiful, radiant person that you could imagine, walking over to them and inviting them over to her table. Just and watching her just interact with people. I remember a couple of weeks before she died, I took her to the water park, and we were sitting there talking, and I happened to look over a little while later, and a lady was, an adult lady was next to her, and they were talking, and just, there's something about watching Lauren interact with people. It just, how beautiful she was, how she radiated kindness.
Yeah, Vern, I'll tell you this too, and I don't know if you know this, but we've talked to a number of children that, you know, said that your daughter was the person that would walk up to them and sit down and talk to them, make them feel comfortable, you know. And so it's consistent with what you're testifying.
Right. She just, we couldn't be prouder as parents of, you want your children to be good people. You want them to understand that life is not a contest, life is a test, and it's not about what you can do for yourself, it's about what you can do for other people. And after she died and hearing the stories, I realized I wasted a lot of breath repeating lessons to her. But she either already knew that, or you only had to tell her once, and not just, okay, I get it, but go out and live it every day. Just the way she interacted with people, I couldn't be more proud.
And she had unique eyes, did she not?
Beautiful eyes, just like her mother. Her mother had some most beautiful eyes, and they were very striking, and they were always that same light blue until the last couple of years. It would seem like they would change. Sometimes it would be blue-green or even sometimes gray, but most beautiful, striking eyes.
Well, I will tell you, and you're probably in the courtroom when this happened, but Garrett Ballmar, certainly as a 6th grader, realized who Vern LandavasosTestifies was in an 8th grade.
Yes, I can imagine, having been a 6th grade boy myself, that had Lauren as an 8th grader approached me, I would probably still be on cloud 9.
And her personality, would you say it was joyful? I think you described it that way to me.
Overwhelming as it is, thinking back, it's hard to remember times when she wasn't happy, and of course there were times that she wasn't happy, but for the most part, just she would light up her room, and I mean, it didn't even have to be anything special. We could be sitting around the house on the rainy Saturday morning and look up from the paper and just be taken back because Lauren would be standing there in some kind of outrageous outfit with makeup put on with eyebrows. She actually looked like a Russian bag lady. Like a unibrow and stuff. Like, what are you doing?
It was did you have a fireplace? Was that her stage?
That was her stage. When she was little, she loved music, loved to sing, and she would get up on the little mantle part of that fireplace, and that was her stage. And those CDs where the kids sing along, Kids Bop, I think it's called, she would sing along to those, and if Bianca tried to sing or dance with her, she was very adamant that that was her spotlight and she wasn't sharing it. So.
And Vern, all these memories, and then let's talk about September 2nd, the morning, okay, or even the day before, and what was Lauren's mood?
Actually, the last time I saw Lauren was the night before. September 2nd I worked for the Air Force, and it was the Labor Day weekend, and they gave the military what they call Family Day that day. So as a civilian, I took a day of leave. Normally, I would have gotten up and, if not woken up Lauren, at least said goodbye to her, but I didn't have to work that day. So that Thursday night, her boyfriend Donovan was over, and when I was getting ready to go to bed, I remember, as usual, she was cradling one of our cats, and I remember going up, and I remember the hug and the kiss I gave her, and the kiss on the top of the head, and smelling her hair. And then, like I say, normally the next morning I did not get up, but she was happy. That's Lauren she was surrounded by what she loved, her family, her cats, and Donovan.
She loved the color purple.
She loved purple.
And what was your nickname?
Her nickname was Pooh Bear. From the moment that I held her, she's been my Pooh Bear. So yeah, she was happy, and I was happy. We were happy. We were living the dream. We had everything that was important in life. Not material things. They're not important. You don't take material things with you. What you take with you is love. And true love. I've never had pure love, a more unconditional love than I've had with my children. And no offense to my sons, but there's something different about a bond between a father and a daughter. It's something I looked forward to my whole adult life.
And you probably don't know this, but I stalked your Facebook and Bianca's Facebook over the past 2 years, and y'all did family vacations.
Family vacations, and I know sometimes maybe Bianca and I thought, well, maybe we need to go take her and see the world and, go do something like that. But really, when we took vacations, and there's limited time that you can take each year for time off, living away from family, family's always been important to us. So we spent most of our vacations going to visit family. And maybe some kids would say, hey, I'd rather be at Disney World or whatever, but Lauren loved family. She loved being around family. So family vacation to see family was what made her happiest. She loved her family.
And occasionally you'd let her boyfriend Donovan come along?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, I was pretty adamant that she would not date until she was at least 16, and very seriously thought that, yes, you can have friends who are boys, but you cannot have a boyfriend. Doesn't always work that way with your children, but again, once I met Donovan and saw what a sweet, loving boy he was, that definitely helped. And again, how happy she was with him, how happy she was to be with him, and how happy that made us to see her in love for the first time.
Vern, I'm going to direct your attention to September 2nd of 2016, okay? And what were you doing that afternoon?
I was actually doing yard work. I wanted to get the yard done that day so that we had the rest of the weekend, and we won't go to the water park or whatever, that we'd be able to do that. So I remember it was very, very hot that day, extremely hot, and I had done the front part of the yard, and then I took a break. I was feeling kind of weak, and so I went in and I was eating lunch, actually in my room on the computer eating lunch. I had just finished, and I heard commotion outside. I heard I'm not sure, I heard neighbors and something about kids being down. And then as I was sitting there trying to process that, I heard Bianca, and just the way she said it, something about kids, and there was just something in her voice. I knew something was wrong, something was horribly wrong. And as I was coming out of the room to try to find out what was going on, I heard the front door close. And by the time I got to it, Bianca wasn't there. So when I went outside, she was already running down the street, and I was kind of calling after her, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" And I remember her telling me that we thought kids had been hit by a car at the time, and so she was running that way, and I didn't really know what was going on or where she was going. So instead of following her, right away I jumped in my truck and drove, because I didn't know where we were going. And as I was driving down there, and it's right around the corner, I remember at one point stopping the truck and pulling over, thinking, there's 1,000 kids at that school. It's not her, it can't be her. And so I stopped, and I called her cell phone, and I don't know if it rang, it maybe rang only one time, but somebody answered the phone, and instantly what I heard was screaming. I didn't know at the time that it was Bianca screaming, but I heard somebody screaming her name, and the way she was screaming it, I knew. I instantly went cold, and I just knew. I got out of the truck, and I walked down to the corner, and as soon as I got to the corner, I could see the crime scene tape. And as I turned the corner, it almost seemed like tunnel vision. Everything seems kind of like there was a white fog around everything except for Lauren. I saw Lauren lying there, and she wasn't covered, and there was no one around her. And I just remember standing at the crime scene tape. They wouldn't let me go to her. And I could hear Bianca screaming in the background, but that was about all I could hear. And just looking at her and wondering, how come they're not doing anything? How come she's just laying there? She wasn't covered at that time. And I remember, I think I said it out loud, that how come they're not doing anything? Why is everybody not doing anything? And next thing, when I looked at her, she was covered, and what I saw was her Converse sneakers sticking out of the blanket. And then I noticed some first responders came over and uncovered her and started working on her and doing CPR on her. So at that point, I thought she was still alive, and they were getting ready to put her in the ambulance. And I went to the policeman at the tape, and I told him I was her father, and I wanted to go with her in the ambulance. So they let me into the ambulance, and as we were sitting there, and they were working on her, and I was looking back at them, and that was the first time I had noticed the blood. I didn't notice blood while she was lying there, but when I looked back, I could see her hair, and there was blood in her hair. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that's not good, blood in her hair. But also what I heard was, we have a heartbeat. I heard one of the paramedics say that they had a heartbeat. And then I heard him say, now we need to start plugging holes. But I thought, oh my God, she's alive. She's alive. So I just remember talking to her on the way, telling her, please, baby, hold up. Hold on. So when we got to the hospital again, I thought she was alive. And when we went in, they took her immediately into her room. And I noticed, I didn't know Michaela's parents, but when I saw Shameka there, I knew that had to be Michaela's mom. And I remember hugging her. I remember, just praying with her that our daughters would be all right. And I remember calling my parents and telling them what had happened, but also that I thought she was alive because I had heard they had a heartbeat, not realize it was an artificial heartbeat that they had gotten. But again, I thought she was alive. So while we were waiting in the hallway there, and again, like Shameka said, Bianca couldn't come in. They had the hospital on lockdown. So while we were sitting there in the hallway, then somebody came and took me to a room, said, we'll take you to Bianca. And when I got in there, Bianca was telling me we were in that room for a reason. And I told her, I said, no, baby, I heard him say she had a heart. She's going to be all right. And when he did come in, when the man came in, Bianca instantly fell to her knees and started screaming. And I was trying to tell her, no, it's not that. They're just here to tell us what they're going to do to help her. And that's when they told us that she was gone.
Did you get a chance, did they let you touch your daughter or be with your daughter after that?
No, they wouldn't let us at the scene go either. It was being treated as a crime scene.
And after they told you that Lauren had been killed, did you stay at the hospital or where did you go next?
Yeah, we stayed in that room for a little bit, but then when they lifted the lockdown, we went outside, and I was actually 5 days away from a year of having quit smoking cigarettes, which I thought would be, when I had quit, I told myself, that's it, I'm done. I want to be around. I don't want to not be around for my daughter, so I had convinced myself that I was going to quit, but the first thing I did when I went outside was smoke a cigarette.
And did you get a chance at that time, at all that day, to see Lauren?
No. Somebody took us home. I remember that. I remember telling them that I needed to get my truck. It was right around the corner, so they stopped, and I do remember the cops stopping. I drive a black Ford pickup and long hair, so I do remember being stopped by the police. Told them who I was, and they let me go home. But just instantly walking into the house, knowing that the life of the house was gone.
Did you know who would do this to your daughter?
A couple days before, or even the day before, she had mentioned there was a girl that was wanting to fight her or something about a misunderstanding. Maybe Lauren had stuck up for somebody and then kind of drawn the ire of the person who was picking on her or she was sticking up for. And honestly, what I thought once I heard she was shot, I thought maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe a brother or something of somebody had driven by or something like that. Maybe she had seen something illegal happen. I couldn't imagine that somebody had targeted her and shot her, killed her. It didn't register.
You remember that whole weekend, this happened on a Friday, up until Sunday when the defendant was apprehended. What do you remember going through your Bianca and how to deal with, if you remember anything?
And kind of from the moment it happened, it almost felt like we were being guided from above. There wasn't really too much that we had to choose to do. Things just were happening, things that seemed to be it just felt like we were being guided.
And you had to do something the father never wants to do, and that's bury your daughter?
Right. Well, we didn't have her buried. We had actually talked with Lauren about our wishes when we died, that we wanted to be cremated. And Lauren had expressed that that was what she wanted to. But what I didn't expect was kind of jumping around a little bit. But after that Sunday night community candlelight vigil that they had, after I got up and briefly spoke to the community to thank them for their support, and that was afterwards, people that I knew were coming up and giving us hugs. And I remember seeing out of the corner of my eye a woman standing off to the side very patiently for about a half an hour waiting to talk to me. So when I did talk to her, she told me something that kind of changed the way things went, I think. She was telling me that at the time she was told that a nurse was kneeling with Lauren on the scene and was comforting her and had asked her if something about her daddy, and she had said that her daddy was her pastor. Or I think she had asked her if she was Christian, is what she had asked her. The lady told me the story, who said she had asked if she was Christian, and Lauren's response had been, "My daddy is my pastor." So when this woman told me that, I thought, well, I'm not a pastor, I work for the Air Force. So that was Sunday night. I was kind of puzzled at that, and it actually was something that was in between trying to process what happened, was kind of gnawing at me. I was trying to figure out why, if those were my daughter's last words, why would she say that? What was the meaning behind that? And at the end of every day, we were surrounded by family, and there were always dozens of people at the house, friends and family, and at the end of the day, Bianca and I would take a walk up around the block we live on, up to a quiet part of that. It was dark and quiet. It was usually at midnight, symbolic of having gotten through a day that we didn't think we would survive, and going for those walks. And as we were doing one of those walks one night, it kind of hit me that, again, believing that Lauren had last words, that Lauren wanted me to be the one to tell the world about her, to tell the world about her life. We're not religious people. We don't. I mean, I consider ourselves spiritual, but we're not religious people. I don't consider myself a Christian, but we do have beliefs of a God and angels, afterlife, but not affiliated with religion. And kind of what I thought that my daughter's message to me was, that she wanted me to be the one, not to have somebody who didn't know her get up and talk about beliefs that weren't necessarily ours. And it just didn't seem, it's not something that I could allow, somebody who didn't know her to get up and tell the story of her life. So at that point I decided that I had to be the one to do that. And in addition to the other things we had to do to prepare for that, to get ready to get at something, again, my worst fear in life, something happening to one of my children, and you're not supposed to have favorites, but it's just, there's something different about a man having sons and a man having a daughter, for me personally anyway. But I just felt like that was my responsibility as her father, and again, thinking that those were her last words. I think what happened was there was confusion, and I'm pretty sure they were talking about Michaela after the fact, but at that time I thought, that's what I'm supposed to do.
And Vern, did you talk?
I did. I was able to just get up and talk about, mostly what I was struck by afterwards was not the specifics of who or how. It was just the fact that somebody that beautiful, that loving, that kind could be taken away. There's something wrong. I already knew the world was a mess. If you don't understand that or realize that, you're not paying attention. as human beings, we're failing our test. We treat each other horribly every single day. Horrible things happen. Just trying to make sense of all of it and be able to try to explain how Lauren was not like that. She didn't care about skin color. She didn't care about somebody's sexuality. She didn't care about their religious beliefs. None of those things mattered to her. What mattered was the person.
And then did you make a request to the police department asking to release Lauren's jewelry?
Yes, she had jewelry, especially the necklace that Donovan had bought her. It was a beautiful diamond pendant. That family doesn't have a whole bunch, and for them to realize how in love those two were and just help him get her that gift. That was a very important gift to her. That was the most important thing to us, to be able to get that. Again,
What'd you do with it?
we tried to give it back to Donovan. I think we...
He has it.
Okay, we did. I'm sorry, we did give it back to Donovan. We thought that he should have that.
And then, was there a memorial that sprung up?
Yes, I guess almost immediately. On the spot where she was killed, and I know initially we couldn't go see it. We couldn't go there. In fact, when we would go anywhere, avoiding that on purpose, actually, it was hard for us to go there and see that. Kind of like everything else since then, there's always mixed emotions. Part of it was just, first of all, overwhelmed by how big that thing got, how quickly it got, and how many people were affected by that.
And can you tell the jury some of the things that were out there? I would assume, Lauren's friends and just people that didn't know what else to do would put little things out there.
All right, there was a lot of purple, overwhelmingly purple. In fact, I wish I would have brought the picture. Somebody took an amazing picture of that memorial at night. And a lot of purple, a lot of bears, a lot of teddy bears, a lot of Winnie the Pooh bears.
And now there's a plaque that's attached to the fence.
Yes, my brother Randy got that made for her. One of the beautiful gifts that is on the fence. And the people who live in that house have been more than gracious of allowing that memorial and for us to put that on their fence. But it's kind of a place that people in that community go, because again, we had her cremated. She doesn't have a grave that people can visit. To the memorial.
People still visit to this day, do they not?
Yes, they do. In fact, I heard yesterday after the verdict that people were going out there, and that's kind of a congregation place for people.
And out of this horrific tragedy, what have you and Bianca tried to do?
We have an amazing legacy that Lauren left behind of kindness, helping other people. That's always been our beliefs as well, but we realize that had Lauren lived, or if Lauren were alive, she would spend her life trying to help others somehow, some way. We didn't know how, but we felt a responsibility to continue that legacy, to continue the things that we taught her, and to try to spread that as much as we can. So we've addressed issues like bullying in school. I know bullying, when I was a kid, it was almost seemed like a rite of passage. It was just something that happened. But to have, again, nothing more important than a child, anything we can do to help children, anything we can do to make it a better world for kids, which, again, as a parent, there is no greater treasure in life. There's nothing you will ever achieve. There's no title you'll have, no material wealth you'll ever have that is more important than a child, or no title more important than mommy or daddy.
And Vern, there's a statue of a horse that's out at the junior high now?
Yes, actually a girl that I worked with in the Air Force for one day, she came over to our section. There was supposed to be a sign there, and then they moved her somewhere else. But she was touched enough by what happened to organize that. as a memorial for not just Lauren, but Michaela as well, that spirit that they had, that friendship, that bond of kindness and love.
And their words are on the horse, correct?
And the horse's name is forever. And that's the reason that Michaela named it. That was symbolic of her love for Lauren, their love for each other.
There's also a bench out there too, right?
The junior high made a memorial bench there. They have memorials in the school, the library. They had the kids in art class as a way to help them as well to make tiles, art tiles that they have on the ceiling there. It kind of turned the library there into a little bit of a war memorial as well.
And there's also, I think the Friday before this trial started, there was a blood drive in Lauren's name.
Yes. The Masons in town had been for several years doing it was a 9/11 blood drive to honor first responders, especially from 9/11, but also the first responders in our own community who do so much every day to serve and protect the rest of us.
And then earlier this year, out by our multi-purpose event center, there's an area that's, why don't you tell us what that area is?
That was something that after this happened, the news of this, what happened, went out around the world, and having been in the military, we have friends around the world. One of the people that reached out to us was somebody who was associated with the thing that did these Angels of Hope statue. I had never heard of it. It was from a book by an author, and it was about a grieving mother and a statue that she would go to visit. And that statue was based on a real thing from, I believe it was China or Japan or something, that it was basically a memorial for parents who did not have a grave of a child to mourn at. And when people started asking the author of the book where they could go for this statue, he started commissioning those statues. And the first one they built in Salt Lake City, Utah, but somebody reached out to us about that. And it was another one of those things that when the lady who reached out to the foundation, you have to be approved for those, told us that we had been approved for one, and then told us that the cost of the statue, basically you have to buy the statue. We had already asked the community to stop giving us money. People were doing GoFundMes and things like that. And eventually it got to the point where it was kind of getting overwhelming, and I wanted people to stop giving us money and start giving money to others in the community, that there's so much need around us. So if you feel the need to help in Lauren's honor, then please give that money to the Humane Society or to a homeless shelter or something that money not important to us. Please don't give us any more. So we had already asked people to stop giving us money, and we didn't think that we're not going to go ask people now to give money for that. So we just thought that was not something that we would do, and we kind of put it on the back burner. And then one day we were talking to our counselor, and she mentioned that the author of that book was coming to town and asked if we wanted to go meet him. So it was just another one of those things where it felt like we were being guided. And once we talked to the author, and it was kind of a fundraiser that went on that night. I guess the next day, people who were there donated money for that. But again, with our state of mind, we weren't really sure what was going on. But eventually we knew we would be able to build that something that we could have in Wichita Falls. That unfortunately there is a need for people to come together and grieve, to grieve together, but also to heal together.
And there's several names. I've been out there and by myself, and there's names that are in marble.
Yes, that's the donor wall. Those are the people who either donated money or helped us with the landscaping or the wiring for the electrical or the irrigation for the plants. There was just a lot of work that went into that. And it was just another way the community came together and donated things. But it's an absolutely beautiful, peaceful place. It's not a cemetery. And for us, the memorial where she was killed is always going to be a painful place to go to, the place where your daughter died. This, in the setting where it is, it's by the river. It's just very serene, very peaceful, and it allows us to go there. And nature to us is always healing. To be in the beauty of nature is very healing for us. So.
And then at night it lights up?
It does. It just light up at night, and that was another thing. We didn't want it in the cemetery. We wanted it to be accessible, because as grieving parents, you're not on a time schedule when you can grieve or when you want to go out and reflect or try to heal. So we wanted something that would be accessible to anybody, anytime.
And Vern, excuse me, do you still talk to Lauren?
There's not a time I don't. I mean, I'm always talking to Lauren, always thinking about her. It's not the same. I know we talked a lot when she was alive, and we hugged and kissed, and we're a very affectionate family. That's how I was raised. But now we kiss pictures, and when we talk to her, we have to talk to her in our heart.
And then, we're going to talk about how your lives have been affected. How was your work affected?
Initially, work, immediately, everything else in life, including work, just didn't seem important. It didn't seem like, first of all, that we were going to survive what had happened. Grief is a very real physical pain that has the capacity to kill, and we always felt like it would.
And then how did you feel once you found out who had committed this murder of your daughter?
Just shocked and stunned, and the picture I saw in the paper, how evil he looked, and just struck by the fact that face is the last thing she had to look at. That just, it infuriates you. And again, for what reason? There's not. I don't know that I've ever even really asked why, because regardless of the answer to that, it's never going to be something that's acceptable. There's no acceptable answer to why.
Is there anything that you want this jury to know that you and I have talked about this morning?
Just again, that even though he killed our daughter's body, he took her physical self away. He did not kill her spirit. And her spirit is bigger than ever, and I always knew she would have an impact in the world. I just never dreamed that it would be the way it has, but I think she's made a bigger impact with her death than probably possible while she was alive. It just, so many people, especially if you're a parent, that's your biggest fear, something happening to your child. And when you face your biggest fear in life, and it doesn't kill you like you think it will, when it doesn't destroy you, like I say, you have to reflect and try to figure out why you're still here, why she's gone, but not get bitter about it. And again, we have an amazing legacy that we still have to carry out and do the things that she would have done while she was still here, and try to spread that love and that kindness. The world needs more of that.
Vern, when did you go back to work?
It took me, I was about 3 months after I was able to start going back to work. And after probably not even a week or so doing that, Bianca's stepmom died. And between what had just happened and then another death in the family, I just knew that I couldn't sit at work. Bianca needed me. She needed me to be there. So it was actually about 4 months before I was able to go back to work.
And how do you and Bianca get through the day?
One day at a time, same way we have since it started. Initially, like I said, it didn't feel like we were going to have to do it very much. It really did feel like our hearts would just stop. We would not survive this. Nothing else mattered. waiting to die is kind of what it feels like.
That's the witness.
No question.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
State your question.
Your Honor, defense would ask the court to take judicial notice of the file in this case.
Any objection from the state?
No, sir.
The court will take judicial notice of the contents of this file.
And the defense witness.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to excuse you with the bailiff. Don't discuss the case, don't form or express your opinions about the case. Let me check on the status of the court's instructions, and I'll inform you as soon as I know that. Jury's recessed.